Well, it's close enough to 8:30, so I figure let's get a start on this. If any of you happen to be in the chat and the audio has issues, just let me know. So this is the first in my live stream builds for this particular model here. This is my Revell 1/48 scale B-24D, and I'm going to be doing quite some extensive modifications to this kit. So just as a quick introduction, this is basically the old monogram kit from, I believe, the 70s that was reboxed by Revell of Germany, but it's all the same basic plastic inside. And my eventual plan is to complete this as a Coastal Command aircraft flown by a Canadian crew. So I've got quite a bit of extra stuff in here. As you can see, I've got wild sow resin, including the stub rocket pods with the rockets and the British style tail turret. I've got the Belcher bits, Mark 24 Fido torpedo and sonobuoys, as well as this is part of the wild sow resin kit. As well as the Belcher Bits ASW modification, which also includes the ley light and the radar. So all of this will be part of this build. I'm just going to get this stuff out of the way because I don't have a use for it right now. I'll get the instructions out. So for this particular video, and I guess just as a general information for how I plan to do this, I'm going to do a lot of the building, the nuts and bolts of the building on this live stream, and I'll prep a bunch of stuff, but most of my airbrushing will be done behind the scenes off camera. So I'll get all that airbrushing done, and then the next time I come on the live stream, I can do any detail painting, weathering, washing, all that kind of fun stuff, working with the resin and doing all of that. But a lot of the airbrushing and a lot of the heavy sanding will probably be done off camera in preparation for the next live stream. Right now I'm planning to do a live stream about once a month, give or take. We'll see how the schedule goes. I have to fit it around when I have when I'm ready to continue, when I have time around my work schedule, and when I can fit it into my family life. So that is that. So for this particular video, I think the plan is going to be we'll start prepping all of the interior parts. Cockpit floor, the seats, all that kind of stuff. Some of the stuff here for the rear fuselage, the gunner's compartment, all that kind of stuff, these bulkheads. We'll start getting all of that, the nose gear, bulkheads, some of the turrets, get all that off the sprues, get it all cleaned up. And then I'm going to have to do two things to modify this. One, I got to get that radar glued onto the nose, which is going to involve modifying the clear piece, which I might get to today, but also I need to do some work in the bomb bay. I'm going to be doing a bit of extra detailing in there, some scratch building. There's some detail. If you put the fuselages together gently and quickly here, you'll see there's nothing in here. When you build the kit, you're going to have two bulkheads, and that entire area in this bomb bay is open. There should be a roof roughly where the wing is, and there should be a whole bunch of structure in this central kind of area here between the two doors. So I'm going to scratch build a bunch of that, as well as that roof, and try to make that look somewhat decent. But I'm going to do that after I get all those interior parts kind of ready. So on that note, let's jump right into this. So I know, kind of just quickly looking through the instructions earlier, I know the bigger assemblies I'm going to need. Things like this cockpit floor. We'll cut a bunch of these off, and then we'll go through and prep them. I need things like this. This is the gunner's tub. I need things like this. This is that rear bulkhead. It goes back of the bomb bay. I think I might just start with those for now. That's going to get me most of that interior kind of in place. And then I can start messing around with some scratch building and fun stuff. So yeah, nip those parts off. Got a sanding stick, an X-Acto knife. We'll go ahead and get all this stuff cleaned up. Knock off as much of these sprue pieces as I can. I got this kit used many years ago. So there has, like, for example, these fuselage halves were removed from the sprues, and I didn't do it. So it's going to make sure that they're somewhat clean. Also, being an older monogram tooling from the 1970s, I don't have it right off the top of my head. I could look it up on ScaleMates if anybody out there actually wants an accurate date, but I believe it was late 70s when this first came off the tool. It's got raised panel lines, which I am going to live with. I have gone down the road of rescribing kits in the past, and I'm not a fan. I find it's easier to work around the raised panel lines and just do some light weathering and whatnot to highlight those versus a complete rescribing of the kit, because for whatever reason, every time I try to rescribe, it looks like junk. Again, if there's anybody out there, any questions, comments, why I'm doing things a certain way, by all means, throw them in chat. I can answer whatever you might have. Go with a smaller. Go with a smaller file. These sponge files that I was using, I really like them, but getting into some of these tight corners with these panel lines and some of this detail, it's very easy to erase what you want to keep. So go to a smaller file. It's a bit more coarse and it does a bit more kind of damage to the plastic, but I'll fix all that after. Wish I could play some music, but I'm pretty sure I'd get a copyright strike from YouTube, so I'm going to stay away from that. You guys will just have to make up your own music and listen to me chatter away here. I'm going to try to stay on for about an hour. We'll see how long I can last. I don't normally sit at the desk for that long at a time. I'm usually ADD and all over the place doing multiple things at once, so we'll see how long I can stick it out. I think once I get into the scratch building aspect of that Bombay, I'll be able to last, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, as I said, I'm going to be doing this up as a Coastal Command bird, and it's going to involve, outside of some of these modifications I'm doing, some other stuff. I'm kind of going to take a little bit of that one last, some liberties with it in terms of markings and interior colors. It might not be perfect, but it's going to look good enough for me, and I'm going to go with what I want to do because it is my model. But I'm going to, again, on that note, do try to keep it as accurate as possible. But I want it to be interesting, so I'll probably do some color choices that might not be 100% historically accurate. Some weathering that might be either too much or too little, or too, little things like that. Like the Bombay is not going to be absolutely perfect. I'm going to take some artistic liberties in there. And I think the waist guns should be slightly different for the version I'm building, but I'm not going to go through the effort of converting it into the standard British style. I'm just going to keep it with the American style that comes out of the kit box. And I'll show you, I got a couple of references I'm using. I'll show you the book here in a second. When it comes time to work on that center fuselage, I'll show you, the Bombay. I'll show you what references I'm using for some of that stuff. I'm also not used to sitting at this desk and building in absolute silence. I'm used to having something playing on YouTube or something playing on Netflix or listening to the music, and it's going to be a little weird to just sit down here at the desk talking to effectively nobody, to my own lonesome, but it is what it is. is the technically it's the second 1/48 scale B-24 I've ever built. I did one many years ago. I would have been grade 3 or grade 4. So we're talking what, 8, 9, maybe 10 years old at the most. I did build one of these. I built the J model, which had the turret on the nose, but I ran into some significant issues with wing fit, and I remember I basically just gave up and threw it in the garbage. Now that being said, this kit probably cost me $25 back in the day, compared to, you know, close to $100 for this thing now. So throwing it out did not seem such a big deal at the time. Now I need some instructions. Okay, so that goes like that. No, it's because I got it the wrong way. There we go. Goes like that. Okay, so that goes in like that. And then the cockpit floor. There we go. Okay. How does the rear fuselage bulkhead go in place? It goes that. Okay. So this is kind of where I need to start worrying about some interior fit. So I'm going to tape these bulkheads into place, and then I'm able to take some measurements and fiddle around in there without too much problem. This is where the fun part begins, and you get to start cutting some sheet styrene and sorting out the best way to make it all work, and you kind of have to just go off on your own and hope for the best. Okay, I'm gonna get myself a set of calipers. You could probably just do this with a ruler and get away with it, but I'm gonna use some calipers. I want something that's about that long. Pull out some sheet styrene. This is the kind of stuff that if you're going to have you do plan to do any type of custom work on a model, it's good to have some of this evergreen plastic. I got as you can see, a stack of it under here, various thicknesses. Doesn't hurt to have. Pull out these two, I think they're the same thickness. Okay. So first things first, I'm gonna want to get a straight edge on this plastic. Let's get this stuff out of the way. For length, I wanted to come down roughly about here, and then over here. I can finesse this a little later with some sanding. It's always best to be slightly too big versus slightly too small. Because yeah, you're gonna end up, if you make it too small, you're never gonna get it where you need to be. But then if you go too big, you can always sand it down and make it fit. So then here, I'm gonna take the width at this point, I'm going to make the assumption that at this point this is roughly square. But we shall see. And then Bombay was... yeah, roughly in that area. So it's somewhere in this area here, which it is not square. It is slightly larger at the front than it is at the back, which is going to make for a little bit of fun because it tapers. So what I'm going to do is cut it square, measure the difference, and then center it. So that's what, 4 mil, roughly 4 mil. So if I take it down to 2, I'm going to offset each side 2 mil. Okay. Now we cut, cross our fingers, and hope I got it right. Cut that the other way, which I don't like doing, so I'm going to have to cut this out. I'll transfer that mark onto the other side. There we go. And then I'll cut this from there to there. Okay, so if anybody's just happening to join in and you're curious what's going on here, I am I'm scratch building some detail into the Bombay of this aircraft, this 148 scale Revell B-24D that does not come in the kit. So I'm just making sure that at this point I'm making a roof to the Bombay, which I think I got pretty damn close, if I don't say so myself. It's not perfect, but it will do in a pinch. The big issue is here on the back side of here. It's not designed to have a roof in here, so trying to make one fit means I have to jam it up against wires and stuff, so it's not perfect, but like I said, it's going to be good enough for what I want to do. But I seem to have made it a little too short. But you know what? That's not the end of the world, because I can curl it to match that, and I'll leave the gap at the front. It's not perfect. If you look at some of the detail, I don't think the book I bought... I purchased this Wing Leader book, which is an amazing reference for Coastal Command Liberators, but I don't think it has the detail in the bomb bay that I'm looking for. I think I was using a picture from the interwebs that showed me the detail I was looking for. Basically, the roof of the bomb bay isn't consistent. It has different sections as it moves along, like the wing spire, then there's a forward and an aft section, and the forward section has like webbing that connects it, so I can get away with not making it tight at the front. I just don't remember if this book has the detail looking up into the roof. It does have some of the detail for the side panels that I want to make. Stuff like this. This shows this side structure that I want to put in place. I'm also going to have to modify the bomb mounts here in a little bit, which you'll see. Yeah, they don't have it. Okay. So I have to use my online reference. But anyways, the front part of this, as I said, there's some spaces at the back where it's supposed to be open with webbing and some spaces at the front. And so I'm just going to live with a gap at the front. And I'll glue this to this rear bulkhead. And that will be the mounting point. Yeah. Okay, so that's probably rooftop, front, rear. This way I don't lose track of what I'm looking at. So now I know that's the top side and what's front and what's aft. And as I said, I'll have to glue this in later. But I think what I'm going to do now is start working on this structure that fits into this little centerpiece. So in pointer, this piece in here, this frame that fits between the two bomb bay doors, on the inside there's a pretty large structure that fits in there and gives it the strength that it actually needs. And then it actually has some struts that come up off of it and touch that roof panel. So I'm gonna have to get the bottom piece installed on both sides, and from there I can glue the roof piece in, and then I can start installing those structural members that hold it all together. And I might have to make it one solid piece across, and then you put the fuselage together, the structure's already in place. So yeah, if I'm not making perfect sense, what I'm going to have to do is I'll glue this all together, and I'll make sure that my thoughts don't just make sense in my head, but make sense to all of you who are watching. So I want to build that center structure, and I'm going to do it both sides will be installed on the half. The same way that these aren't two halves that fit together, it's one bulkhead. I'm going to do the same thing in here. So this is going to get glued to this rear bulkhead, and then I'm going to build that center piece, install the structure, but then also build the other side's piece and its structure and glue all of it to the roof. And then it'll hang out, and when I assemble the two halves of the fuselage, it should all fit in there quite nicely. But that means everything will be nice and tight. And then the other thing I have to do, as I mentioned with the bomb bays, if you look at the instructions, this took a little bit for me to actually kind of figure out properly. So these bomb bays, these ladder structures here that hold the bomb shackles, have these little struts that come off across the top, and they're supposed to fit into those holes. And that's what holds them out far enough and keeps them vertical, because they actually mount into the centerpiece and kind of hang vertically in here, connect into this little side piece, and it leaves an alleyway down the middle for the air crew to pass forward and aft between those bomb shackles. But while I'm adding the roof, that won't exist anymore. So I'm going to have to cut the top of those shackles or the top of the structure at the right point and then mount it so it touches the roof. So it's going to be a bit. I'm curious. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'll get one side done and then I'll see if I can figure out how to get the other side together in a way that it actually fits. The only other way I can do it is by splitting the roof down the middle and hoping that it all lines back up. Which honestly, I might do it that way. Oops, I got that backwards. I might split this roof down the middle. No, I can't do that because I want to make it, I want to fill that gap at the back. Yeah. This is the joys of trying to modify things, and I'm doing it on the fly on a live stream. So you guys all get to watch my thought process here. But as I said, I'm trying to figure out a way to get this structure here to connect into here and have some actual strength, but then I have to mirror it on this side. And if I glue it to the other half of the fuselage, it's going to be really difficult to get it all to line up properly. But then if I glue it to this and have it kind of hanging, getting it to line up on the other half of the fuselage will be the problem. So it's a little bit of a technical conundrum I got to work out. But first things first, I will start constructing this structure down here. And I need to know that curve. And I have a fun little tool somewhere. Where'd my fun little tool go? There it is. Bought this thing like 20 years ago. I think I've used it once. So it's a profile finder. So you can take a profile and push it down and it'll broadcast the profile through to the other side. It's not perfect. It's pretty large in terms of size. So it doesn't have the fidelity for some of these smaller kits, but I think it's going to be enough to press this into it and get an idea for what that curve should actually be. I got to make sure I don't warp this at all. Let's see if I push this in. Something like that. That piece there's got to come back a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. So if I do that, then I can transfer that shape onto right to the edge of the desk here, and I will use a pencil. Okay. And then I'll cut that out. Gotta clean up a little bit of my mess. Losing track of where I'm putting everything. Again, I'm not used to having a live stream going. I'm used to just making an absolute disgusting mess on this desk and then kind of cleaning it all up at the end. But I'm trying to keep it organized and clean enough that all of you guys out there can actually see what I'm doing. So like I said, I'll cut this out. This will be my master template. If this actually matches the shape, then I will just copy this across all my other pieces. that. And again, I can sand this down to the final shape. This is just a test. I'll eventually need 4 of these if this works. Let's cross our fingers and hope the profile is the same inside and out. And it is very, very close. Very close. Okay, so let's finesse that a little bit. So there's a hole there. So I need to tighten this curve up. Looking a lot better. I need to cut this back a little bit. It's not going to be this high, and the top is interfering with it sitting tight. Oh, that is basically perfect. Yeah, I'm happy with that. A little bit of Mr. Surfacer will fix any issues along that side. So I'm very, very happy with that. So the next thing I need to do is mark the center point. That's the center. So I'm going to cut that back. Height doesn't matter as long as I line it up the exact point at the bottom. It's only going to be like a millimeter 2 or so at the bottom. So I'm not too worried about where the knife goes at the top. I just want to make sure my cut at that point lines up. Everything up here will effectively disappear once I'm done trimming this down. And then I just copy it, cut it out 4 times. So that should now, yeah. And I need to look at my picture again. So this is a really good shot right here. This is the structure I'm trying to recreate right now. This beam in here. And then these are the bomb shackles. Those vertical ladder structures I was talking about that I'm going to have to chop to meet the roof. But you see there's this piece here, this curve. That's what I'm trying to recreate right now. And then there's a piece of beam that comes up here to the roof. And there's another one that's going to live on an angle and tie into that in a little triangle. And you can also kind of make it out here where you've got, this is the bottom of that curved piece, and you've got the ladder bomb shackle structure here. This is the vertical beam that comes out. There's this angled beam across that are going to touch effectively up at the roof. I may or may not put this piece in. We'll see how tiny that ends up being. But yeah, so you can kind of see where I'm going. I'm going to go up a little bit farther from the opening, somewhere up to maybe about where those wires are. And then once I chop it, it's a straight line. And that gets me the curve that I need. So now I'm going to hold this in place. At least I'm going to attempt to. Something like that. I'm going to mark about here. Like I said, this doesn't need to be perfect. I'm not trying to win any contests for accuracy. I'm just trying to make it look good. So I'm going to bring that. Chop that across. These kind of things, don't throw out this size plastic if you're ever doing this. Those will come in handy at some point. This is kind of stuff you throw out, but any little bits of plastic that size, never throw them out, because you know what? That's almost perfect for one of those internal beams that I need. So you never know when you need a piece. So don't throw stuff out. And then that should get me almost exactly what I need. Don't know how well you can kind of see it when I'm doing this, but you can kind of see it lines up at the bottom corner where I want it. It lines up at the top corner where I want it. Now I'm going to do that angled chop. I'll leave myself about that much at the bottom. Just winging it. And then I'll cut from there to there. Chop that off. Like that. That should be the final shape. Yeah, that's going to look really good. So that's the kind of thing when you're looking inside that bomb bay now from the outside, instead of it just being this open void, it's going to have some structure. It's going to have some shape. It's going to look really good. So now I need to make 3 more of those. So I'm just going to trace them using that pencil. Again, if it's not quite the right size, as long as you err slightly bigger, you can sand it down. 1, 2. Where am I going to take the third from? Yeah. I'll stick it in here. Oh, I moved it. Oh, well, whatever. It's going to be. Okay. So now, just to make life easy, I'm going to take this entire piece out. Like that. I'll cut them out. The other thing with this kind of plastic, you might have the thought, you know what, just hack right through it as fast as you can. Take your time. Even if it's paper thin, give it a couple of passes. You go through just one really hard pass, you're liable to slip the knife. You can either, especially if you're pressing really hard, slip out. The worst, I mean, and I've done it enough times over my life, is when it slips the other way and catches you. You get a knife into the side of the thumb or a knife side of the finger. That has happened more than my fair share. So I always find just a nice gentle pressure. If you got to go over it 2 or 3 times, go over it 2 or 3 times. It's a lot better to take that, take the time to do that than it is to put an X-Acto knife through the side of your finger. And then you got to deal with all that nonsense and potentially a trip to the hospital if it's deep enough. I've gone at least twice that I can think of for stitches after chopping part of my finger open. So take your time, multiple passes. It's more accurate and it's a lot safer. This kind of stuff, that's garbage, not worth keeping. The other thing I've seen a lot of people do, especially someone like, if you watch someone like, you know, Adam Savage's Tested channel, when he's making stuff out of styrene, you'll see he can score it and you can snap the sheet. And I've done it before and it works really well if you're cutting large pieces out. But for small stuff like this, snapping it, you're a lot more liable to cause problems. So I always try to cut my my styrene. Okay. So now I've got my 3 copies. My master. I'm just going to match them up and check for shape. You see it's quite a bit larger. So that's where I'm just going to take the time. Try not to sand the master one. That's the whole point of having the master. But you can sand it pretty close to the shape of it, and then you can finesse it once you go to assemble it in the model. That one's pretty good. One of the reasons why I like these foam sanders. They got the 4 different grits on them. You can pick the one that you most need for your project at that time. I used to just use those metal ones, and I had a couple of like nail files, legitimate nail files from like the pharmacy and stuff like that, and they worked. But then I ended up picking this up on a spur at the local hobby shop. By the way, hobby center if you're in Ottawa. I love it. The sponge is easier to hold. It's a little forgiving, and having the 4 different grits on one is nice. My only complaint, it's a little on the fat side this way. It's hard to get into some of the tight details. I might eventually end up looking at getting some of the skinnier versions of these. I've seen people like Nigel's modeling bench. He has a bunch of them. A lot of his are from English suppliers in England, and it's harder for me to get that kind of stuff. But excuse me. Yeah. These this one works great. I'm looking at Amazon. They have some on Amazon that might be worth spending the money on. Now I'm just going to do a quick test, make sure these all kind of look good. I'm going to finish one side completely before I move on to the other. Yeah, these all fit really well. Like I said, I'm not quite sure how I'm doing the other side yet, so I'm going to glue these into this side. So yeah, I'm going to put 2 of these aside. Gonna get myself a little these little 25-cent shot glasses. They're 25 cents. They're a pack I bought at the dollar store years ago. Okay, just a pack of plastic disposable shot glasses. These are actually left over from my wedding, which was 13 years ago. I use them to store parts. I've got a bunch of parts in them and stuff like that. You don't keep track of all your little parts. They don't go missing. And they're super cheap. Like I said, $2-3 for a pack of 25 or 30 at the dollar store, and as long as you don't break them, they last forever. I use them to mix up my black wash and everything, and they're worth it. So I'm gonna glue these in. I'm not gonna talk anymore. I don't even know what time it is. 9:12. I've been on here for almost an hour. I didn't think I was gonna make it for a full hour, but got another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll wrap this up, and we'll come back and do this again another day. So let's get this glued in. These are a lot more kind of stream of consciousness videos, but for anybody out there who is interested in the building process, this is kind of how it works for me. Not much else other than this place being an absolute mess and no music playing. This is an average building session for me at the desk. So pair of tweezers. Okay, get these in. They don't have to be perfect because, as I said, I can tweak it after the fact. They are pretty much perfect though. But I can always get in here and sand them down a little bit. I can fill with Mr. Surfacer, clean it all up. Try to make sure these are parallel as much as possible. Does not want to fit quite square. I think I know why, and I really don't want to deal with it if that's the reasoning, but I think I might have to. There's a locating pin. There's a locating pin here, and I think the shape of that pin is interfering with this actually seating where I want it to seat. So they might not be perfectly square. I might have a slight bulge on one side, but C'est la vie. I'm going to live with it. I have to say, I actually thought I'd get quite a bit more done on this live stream than I actually did. But it just means the next one will have even more work to do on it. Okay, well, I'm going to leave that there. Let that dry. Excuse me. Okay, so while that's drying, let's do some actual kit assembly. I think you spent the past like 45 minutes just watching me stream of conscious scratch build. So yeah, you know what? Let's clean this up a little bit. And I will get the sprues out, and we can start. Let's start assembling some pilot seats. Right there. We'll start getting some of this stuff glued on. Okay, what do we need? We need 53 and 54. Am I blind or what's going on here? Okay, so there is half of what I'm looking for. Okay, so those are there. Where are the pilot seats? Oh, there they are. No, those are pilots. Ah! Baggie of parts that I did not see. Downside to buying kits used is you don't know what the previous owner has done or not done to the kit before you got to it. Okay, so there's going to be pilot seats. Everything else I'll put back because I don't want to lose anything. I made this mistake a little while ago when I was working on my B-17F YB40. I threw these guys out. These are little shafts that fit inside the engines that allow the propellers to stick to them. And I mistakenly was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to need those. Anyways. I had to make my own because I threw those ones out. So, okay. 2 pilot seats, and the pilot seats frames are right here. Snip those doodads off, and we will clean them up, get those glued together. I mean, this kit's not going to be the level of accuracy that something like the Hobby Boss kits will have, or like a modern Trumpet, or even a modern Revell kit tends to have a lot more detail than this. As I said, it's a rebox of the old Monogram kit, which was at its time was amazing, but today's level of detail just doesn't quite stack up. But I'm not going to care about that. When I'm done with it, it's going to look good. I'll be happy with it. I consider myself a 3-foot modeler. As long as it looks good from 3 feet away, I'm okay with it. So you just got to learn. Some people like that uber detail, and I commend them for it. Again, something like watching, you know, Nigel's modeling bench, the amount of effort he puts into making things look as realistic as possible. I've seen him spend hours and hours and hours rebuilding a section of the kit that no one's ever going to see or notice, but it makes him happy, and it's very accurate. And again, to each their own. I can't do that. I did at one point, and I realized it was just so much work, and at the end of it, you know, I don't build my kits to go, not yet, to win contests. I don't think I'll ever get to that point. You know, I don't care what other people think of my builds. I do what I do because I like doing it, and that's that. So I will build it to the level of detail that I am happy with. And that goes for anybody else out there who builds models. At the end of the day, you know, if you would like to improve and you're looking for other people's opinions on how to make your kits better, great. There's tons of people out there with tons of knowledge that will gladly pass that knowledge on to you. But don't feel like you have to build to somebody else's standard. Build to your standard. Build what makes you happy. And if you do that, this hobby will be very, very enjoyable for you. And I think that's part of a problem. There's a lot of people out there who get onto, like, you know, the internet and Facebook and Reddit and all that other stuff, or they go to an IPMS contest and they see these kits and they feel inadequate because they can't quite match it. And then they try and they strive and they get frustrated. Just have fun. Just have fun. That's all you need to do with this hobby. Okay, I want to get that stool. How much do you want to bet that was in that baggie that I just put back in? Nope, right there. So this is the bomb aimer stool. So I'll get that cleaned up, glued into the nose. The other, whoop, almost dripped out my coffee. The other thing, when you come to some of these sub-assemblies, I try to keep like-minded things like-minded before I paint them. I'll probably end up... No, I'll probably paint these seats before I glue them on. The Norden bomb sight, the instrument panel, all that will get painted before I glue it on. But this seat, it's going to be the same color as everything else in the nose section, this little stool. So you can glue it in place and then just airbrush it and weather it after the fact. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's usually what I'll do. If it's all the same, I'll assemble kind of as much as I can, and then I will... and then I'll go through and paint it. Paint it out with the airbrush, you know, sub-assemblies black, whatever you need to do, then assemble it. Again, I'm not too worried. A lot of people say you got to scrape the surfaces so there's no paint. I've never scraped my surface, my mating surfaces after painting, and I've never had a problem with kits coming apart. So, again, to each their own. I'm more than happy gluing that in, and then I'll paint around it. Like I said, I gotta have to modify that to fit. Wondering if I could just glue that into the side. So many possibilities. These are one of the things I might have to play around with it off camera, come up with a plan, and then when I come back on the next one, I'll have a plan, and we can execute said plan. Kind of came into this one blind. I haven't played with this at all. I literally just kind of looked at some references and kind of knew what I roughly wanted, but never actually came up with a... I've never sat down with this plastic like this and gone through it and looked and saw the geometry of what I'm actually doing. So this is kind of a going in cold, but I think we can make it work. Get this... If I can get it up. I've got a jam. Come on. There we go. No. No. There we go. 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 No, this is not easy. Need my long ones. Don't even reach. Probably not. There we go. That's what I wanted. So that is going to give you a good idea of what it's going to look like when you kind of look inside. And that's maybe what I'll do is I'll glue it to one half of the fuselage. And then I'll just have to play with it and make it work. One side, everything will be glued. The other side will kind of float. But I think at the end, it should work. My only other option is cutting this piece off here and here, and then gluing this piece to this piece and having this, and then dealing with the seams on this side, which isn't, again, impossible, but it's not ideal, but it would allow me to deal with it. The only other thing, I could build a strip that goes over the top that's that wide, and I can glue the legs to that. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut a piece of strip styrene the width of this, glue it in the inside, and then everything will glue to that strip, and then glue to the roof, and then this fuselage will just sit in place. And the bomb bay is gonna be painted the same as the exterior color. Yeah, and I'll be able to mask in there and clean up the seams after the fact. That's what I'm going to do. Problem solved. Yeah. Yep. I like it. That way everything can glue to the roof. Everything can be tight. Everything will be locked in place, especially when that rear bulkhead gets put in place. Everything will be locked in. Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be my plan. So I'm going to glue the rear bulkhead in place first. That will be glued in. I will glue this piece in like that, and then I will have a plate across the bottom that sticks out the width of the two halves. That way the next side can glue onto that, and I can use the vertical structure to jam it in place against the bottom of this and make sure everything locks in. Yeah. Okay. Kind of. Okay, well, that's at least I kind of have a plan. Sort of. It's always fun because you got two halves, but you're trying to build it all in one piece so that it all fits together. Because if I glue those to those, I have no way of getting those vertical pieces in. So I have to glue it all together so that when I drop it in, those pieces just line up, and all I have to worry about is cleaning up that seam, and I can brush paint the rest of it out. Oh, don't you love scratch building? I mean, I don't have to do any of this. I could have just lived with it, but I really wanted to have that detail in there. When you looked in, it looked a little bit more busy, and it just wasn't an empty void. So I think the last thing I'm going to do, while I still have a little bit of effort in me, I'm not quite completely asleep yet, I'm going to work on boxing out this top, and we'll probably call it there. So I'll cut just a strip off. Work with it. So same as before, just kind of get it in there, make a mark, something close to where it needs to be. Doesn't be perfect because it's going to get chopped up and sanded and all cleaned up and whatnot. So do it the other way. Yeah, see? Okay. So then that's going to fit like that. So now if I line that up and I mark it down here somewhere about there, I can chop it, and that should slide. Just a little bit of sanding. Just like that. Bit of glue that in. And I think we might call that live stream here. Not a whole lot of people showed up, but I didn't expect them to, as it was my first one. There we go. That's boxed out. Just touch it with a little bit of the extra thin. Make sure it's going to bond in there nice and tight. Make sure the top one lines up. There we go. There. Now let that dry. And yeah. So I'm probably going to wrap up this live stream here. For those who did show up and watch this on the live side of it, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming out. This will eventually go up on the regular channel as a regular video, as well all of these live streams, so that there will be sort of a record of this build, similar to my time lapse, but not actually sped up in any way. Before the next video, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to do a bit more in this Bombay. I'm thinking what I might end up doing is fleshing out this central beam idea that I have. Yeah, I'll probably end up figuring out this central beam, getting it installed, so that from that point on, when I jump into the next live stream, I'll hopefully have that central beam and the other half of this piece glued into place. And I'll have all that geometry sorted out so that we can dive right in, getting this roof glued into place. I'll probably glue this rear bulkhead into place on the next live stream. It's going to be easy for me to paint that glued in. There's not a lot of detail on that I need to worry about. Yeah, that's my plan. I'll get the central walkway sorted out. I'll get the other half of this structural member figured out and glued in place and whatnot. And then on the next live stream, we can glue in this bulkhead. We can glue in the roof. We can add all of our vertical supports. We'll be able to glue in the bomb racks at that point, or at least cut them down to the right size. I'll probably end up cutting holes in the bomb bay roof so that they will slide into the holes and lock down into that. So I'll probably get that sorted out on the next live stream, and then we'll continue prepping some of the interior parts and be ready for paint. Yeah, so there we go. I'll actually build out a description for all of that, so the next time you guys jump onto this, if any of you do come out of the next live stream, you will know what my plan is, and I will know what my plan is, and we will not be going into this as blind as we were on this one. So time is 21:35, so I've been on for just a hair over an hour. So once again, for all of those out there who did come onto this live stream, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will be posting on Facebook, on my the Sean's Aviation Facebook page, if you want to keep an eye on that. I'll be posting kind of the date and time for the next one, roughly a month from now, probably around the same time, 8:30 p.m., 20:30 Eastern. Just fits better with my life schedule, and we will go from there. So we're wrapping it up. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.